Greetings. Welcome once again to GatherVerse Women's Health Summit 2026. Panelists, we're happy to have you join us. March is Women's Month, so happy International Women's Day. It's so good to see all of you here to have this wonderful roundtable discussion on work, leadership, and women's health. I want to appreciate previous speakers that has joined us on this summit to discuss women's health. Every conversation had here has been quite insightful, with great impact and perspectives as well. Before we get started, I'd like for us to briefly introduce ourselves and then we will head right into the questions. I would introduce myself and then I'll start with Susan and Erila, Dr. Zakia, Letitia, and Amy. So my name is Salvation Chigereoka, Global Programs Director at GatherVerse. I'm joining you from the beautiful island of Lagos, Nigeria. And it's so good to join you today to have this wonderful conversation on work, leadership, and women's health. It's one that I find personally intriguing and I have been having conversation about. So happy to join you. Susan, please kindly introduce yourself, tell us who you are, where you're joining us from, and your inspiration for joining the summit.
Absolutely. Thank you, Salvation. My name is Suzanne Bloom. I am from the west coast of Canada. I am north of Vancouver. Most people know where that is. I am a life design and manifestation coach. And when you talk about women's health and the workplace and leadership, and so many of us believe that that's out of our control, and yet so much of it is within our grasp. And so that's why I really wanted to gather here today.
Thank you, Suzanne. Very much welcome from the north side of Vancouver. We welcome you. And yes, we're also part of Inspiration. Arila, please.
Hello, this is Erila. I'm joining from Cambridge, Massachusetts. I am the Chief Operation Officer of Global Innovation Management Institute, the largest certifying body and a network of 18,000 innovators. But I'm also founder of Voice of Women Innovation, which is a network of I created last year actually to increase the women involvement in decision making when it comes to innovation, but also in innovation teams. And actually there we have a cluster that it is on healthcare innovation. And I'm really happy to talk about this issue today.
Welcome you, Arila. Great work on what you're doing there. It's very important work. We need to take more action and you're doing it. So thank you very much. Dr. Zakia, please.
Hello, everyone. I am very humbled and honored to be here with you all. My name is Dr. Zakia Ghaffari. I am a geriatric pharmacist, and I have done over 25 years in women's health and geriatric care in New York City. And I think this is a discussion that it deserves a lot more attention than we do give it when it comes to women and leadership and how it's been affecting women for the past many decades. I'm glad to be a part of this discussion with everyone.
Dr. Zakia, I personally agree with you on that. I do. Welcome very much. Letitia, please, your mic is muted. Yeah.
Yes, I wanted to make sure. Thank you so much. I'm super excited to be here today. This is actually my second opportunity on being on the panel. And so it was amazing the first time around. I anticipate the same this go round. My name is Letitia B. Russell. I'm an HR consultant, speaker, and emotional well-being coach. And so my work really sits at the intersection of thinking about workplace culture and leadership pressure, right? Thinking about that emotional cost of success. And so many leaders look super successful on paper, but they're burned out in private. And so that's where my work sits today. I'm just inspired to join this conversation simply because I think the growing recognition of workplace performance, right, and women's health, it's very much connected, but it's not something that we really talk about and say out loud. And so super excited to just being able to join this conversation so that others can truly see themselves in some of the responses and the stories that we share today.
Yes, totally. Thank you very much. Welcome, Letitia. Amy, please.
Thank you so much. It's an honor and pleasure to be here really looking forward to our discussion. My name is Amy Edelstein, and I'm the founder and executive director of Inner Strength Education, which brings mindfulness and systems thinking programs inside the public schools. And we've worked with 35,000 young people, and now, expanding into working with leadership. I've been a part of the women's change movement since the 70s, and a part of the wellness movement also since the 70s. I started my own meditation practice in 78. So it's a little bit ancient history. And I feel that it's critical right now as we look at AI tools, at data collection, at advancement, at somewhat of a denial of our humanity and the value of our embodied sentience and consciousness. And that tends to affect women much more strongly and directly. So I think this is a really important conversation to approach in all these different ways, from education and wellness to technology and our unknown future. So thank you.
You're welcome, Amy. There's a lot to be unpacked from that angle, Amy. So we're here to discuss it. Shall we begin, panelists? Awesome. Amy, I think you will kick us off with the first question. I'm also a community builder myself. I am a chapter lead for a women organization here in Lagos, Nigeria, and we're focused in empowering young women and girls in tech. And then we have this section every Friday at the end of every month, or what we call it Rant Friday. So we give room to the women in the community to come rant about everything they feel like they want to share with somebody. And trust me, if you join a community group on a Friday, you will be amazed. And most of this conversation is geared towards burnout from work. A lot of things are just expressed, and that's consigning. And that's why this conversation is very much important to me. And Amy, yes, please, you will start the conversation with us for us and tell us where you mentioned you started this movement in the 70s and you've been on here pushing and keep pushing as well. Where do you think, where are workplace structures misaligned with women's biological realities?
I think we can start in so many places. One of the things that's little thought about is, what's the temperature in the workplace? So women's dress code is often wearing tight sleeveless tops, while the men have undershirts and long sleeve shirts and jackets. So women freeze and and men are hot. And women, it's a small thing, but when your environment is so unwelcoming and so not designed for you, from a very visceral level, you feel like you don't exactly belong. It's something about yourself and your body and your embodiment doesn't fit this culture. And, again, it goes to workplace dress. Most women feel that if they don't take 45 minutes in the morning to make themselves presentable, they won't be taken seriously. Meanwhile, they're dealing with children or husbands or caretaking for elderly. So again, the expectations of how you just show up physically are an impediment to women that it's unseen. Men don't notice it because they don't deal with it. It's not necessarily a malicious intent. It's just, a lack of understanding. So I think, there are other issues around maternity leave and childcare and just acceptance of a need for a flexible schedule for women who are primary caretakers. So all of those things are structural realities. But I think deeper than all of those things is how much we care for our collective flourishing, our collective health, well-being, happiness, purpose, and fulfillment. And if we're taking that as our raison d'etre, rather than profit and shareholders, we would shift our view. So we wouldn't just be fixing the temperature or changing the dress code, because those things we know, another thing's going to pop up. What we want to do is shift the value set. so that flourishing, meaning, purpose, belonging, and fulfillment of our higher capacities are really what's generating our economy.
Amy, a lot was just said there, especially when you started with the dress code. I can I can relate to that a lot. This tightness, this non-freedom thing that starts with how we dress, how we look. It's something that needs to be paid attention to. And then when you moved further to this to tell us more on how we need to re-review what has been in the system. I think I read somewhere about the great breakup. I don't know if any of you have read about the great breakup. It's this research by McKinsey reporting women in leadership leaving their jobs because of burnout, because of stress levels that they can no longer tolerate. And that's consigning. Letitia, I would like for you to take us forward to chime in on your own perspective on this question.
Yeah, so when you think about, I think the question is how does burnout manifest just differently in women? It does, on so many levels, and there are many times it's comparative of how does it look in women versus how does it look in our male counterparts. For the most part, women often experience burnout, because of the professional pressures as well as the personal pressures. And so many times I hear that whatever happens in your personal space, you leave it there, right? And then whatever happens in your professional space, like that's when you handle it. But I do believe if you don't take care of it in one setting, it's going to spill over into the next, right? And so as women, we have job responsibilities. We carry the emotional labor and wear it like a badge of honor, right? Whether it's mentoring people, whether it's conflict, whether it's supporting individuals at work, right? We manage those things. And burnout doesn't always show its face immediately, but it does show up as the chronic exhaustion, right? I'm so tired, I just can't function, but we keep moving. It's being able to make decisions. It's decision fatigue, but so many times it's tied to performance or lack thereof, but it's not. We're burned out, right? It's that emotional depletion that we feel. And when those things happen, we tend to quietly withdraw, right? And so it's not this big hoopla of, oh my God, I'm burned out. It's none of that. But it shows up more times than not in those high achievers, right? In those women that simply need to get things done. And we are running on empty. And because of that, the burnout is often overlooked or tied to something else or labeled as something else until it becomes a health issue. And so when we think about like how does burnout manifest, that's how it manifests, because there is so much responsibility that we don't always name it or call it out or sit with it. We continue to go and move.
Right, Letitia. Everything you said that there is spot on. I'd like Dr. Saki to take us a bit closer to what we're trying to talk about burnout, right? Because I have felt burnout. I'm sure you have all felt burnout at some point in time. And like Letitia just mentioned, we we picture it as something else until there is a challenge. One headache there, one pain there, and then we start realizing, oh, we actually had overlooked the things that we shouldn't overlook. Dr. Zaki, take us a bit further. How does burnout manifest differently in women? Letitia already mentioned, but you can share more on this with us.
I think burnout in women shows up very differently than in men. And we tend to lean towards male leadership and how that's been a part of our culture for many decades. And so everything else kind of gets put by the wayside. I agree with everything Letitia said. I think in women, the burnout gets layered in with where they are hormonally and physically at that time. And why I say this, because during a woman's 20s, 30s, and 40s, they're expected to be in these leadership roles where they're not only given a lot of responsibilities, but they can definitely live up to those. And they want to surpass all of those and be successful. But then you get to this point in a woman's life where either she's going through a pregnancy, or she's going through a health issue, or she is going through perimenopause, which can start as early as 30, 35 years old. Now with the state of our food and all of the pollutants that we have, perimenopause has started a lot earlier than it has been documented in the past. And so when these things happen, the symptoms come up in many different ways where it's not recognized as necessarily as burnout, or it's not recognized in a way that honors the woman. It's just a thing that you have to fix. It's a thing that you have to get over. It's a thing that you have to leave at the door and not talk about, because everyone is looking at you to see if you're going to live up to the expectations that they have, if you're going to continue to be the great leader that you've been for the last, however many years. But this is where we need to take a step back and see a person for the holistic view of who they are, and not just what they can produce for a company, right? So we have focused, I think, far too long, especially in leadership, in making sure that we get every ounce of goodness out of a person without looking to them to see what it is that they need for their longevity in leadership, what it is they need for their mental health so that they don't face burnout. And burnout in women shows up as not only in getting stressed and having a lack of sleep, or having some symptoms that are related to ADHD, where you have 10 things open, 10 tabs open in your mind at all times. But at the same time, it comes out in other ways where you're constantly short-tempered, where you're not able to sleep, so you're not able to reset at all. And then it has led to chronic fatigue syndrome in many women in leadership. It has led to symptoms that are almost like lupus, where you feel like from the inside you're literally falling apart and you just don't know why. And you don't know what's happening. And you keep thinking it's me internally and not what is around me and that's affecting me. I personally have gone through this several times, in fact. And I have to tell you from personal experience, in the very beginning, I started to doubt myself, to say, maybe I'm not cut out for this. Maybe this is just not the space where I'm supposed to be. When in fact, I was doing probably 150% of what was expected of me in this role. And I still thought that wasn't enough. And I still thought I had to do more, because I wanted to be successful. I had goals, I have ambitions, and many women in leadership do have continuous goals. So not only do we beat ourselves up about it, we're not getting enough support. We're not giving ourselves a break at all. And underneath all of this is, we just don't understand that the female body, both physically, psychologically, and mentally, it functions very differently than men's. And so if we have more open discussions about this, where we support the longevity of leadership, instead of saying, where you look at the outcomes instead of seeing how present they are today, right? If you are actually looking at strategy instead of taking off to say, did they show up on time? Did they leave on time? Did they stay overtime? I think that would serve not only the company in itself, no matter what industry that is, but it would definitely serve the person, the woman in that position, more holistically than we have ever done in the past. And I think that's incredibly important. I mean, we have so many women as part of the workforce and in leadership roles, where I'm surprised this hasn't been addressed sooner. But this has been like a part of my generation of women moving forward all these years, where we traded in the high heels for sneakers for a while, right? That was the thing. We didn't want to walk on pavements with high heels just because we needed to look good. We wanted to be comfortable because we were doing all these other things on the side. So it's just like Amy said, it's the small things. It just a change in the room temperature is one thing, but it does start the conversation of being mindful of where this person is and how we can support them.
Yeah, yes, Dr. Zaki, you said a lot there that are very meaningful. And your experience, I'm sure each and every one of us can relate to it at some stage or at some phase in our career path. And there's something you mentioned, expectations. And then I have this backup question. When you mentioned expectation, maybe I was just so into agreeing with nearly everything you mentioned. So I would just take up the question. And one of what you said, you mentioned expectations. And then it brings me to ask, who is expecting us to show up so much more than we should show up? The blind expectations. Who is expecting that from us? Are we proving someone is other than ourselves? Because I think that's where the burnout comes in most times, from within. Oh, I have this milestone 2026. I want to smash this goal 2026. I must hit this bucket list 2026. It starts from there, right? And expectations that coming up. So who is really, is it within us? Are there external forces? Who is expecting us? What are the forces giving us these expectations that we overlook our health sometimes and we stay up 1 a.m., 3 a.m., we're sleeping 4 a.m. every day. We've normalized it. We're saying, oh, work-life balance is not really for me now, maybe next year. Who's expecting us to go that mile? I really like to hear from you.
Thank you very much, and that's a great question. I think it's twofolded actually, and I don't know what has been the cause, like at the first place. But first of all, I think the society we have learned basically we got used since we were kind of little girls that hey, we have to be great at school, we have to be great friends, great daughters, and probably great wives, and then great employees, or then of course we dreamt about being great leaders. And I think despite how we were raised, overachievers or not, I, at least from my experience working with women, they get the work done. I've seen that, their performance is great. Of course there will be differences, from generation to generation or things like that, but still the best colleagues that I have are women. Sorry for saying that, but they get the work done and they are doers. So, but again, it's not enough, so for example, when they get pregnant, I've heard many women being afraid of saying that to their, leaders, because there is the chance of not getting promoted, not giving that exciting project to them, or even more. I have women actually in my network. I was completely shocked that in countries like Europe, in Spain, for example, even though the laws exist, she was fired immediately when the leader in a big company, that the leader learned that she was pregnant. And these things exist, that's the reality. But not to mention after the let's say the at the postpartum period, I am actually just came from the maternity leave 3 months, and we know the US, for example, is one of the countries, the only country in OECD basically, that you don't have a national pay maternity leave. So right away there, it's kind of an impediment basically for these women, and a worry, another concern. So besides, of course, the other concerns that you have, that hey, I have to bring a healthy baby into this world. I don't know how to raise if it's for the first time and all this. Now you have the worry that, okay, but I'm going to get fired. Probably I'm not going to get promoted. I'm not going to get the salary, and all this because why can't we have all? We can have the career, we can have the baby, and all this, because there is also this tendency. Oh no, you can't have it all, and there is a phase. You have to basically be a mom, and then to be whatever, a leader or a great employee. But I think I've seen women do all, and this is kind of a boomerang sometimes, that we put to ourselves, that hey, we have to prove them wrong that we can do it, and we got used to this tactic, and then all the burnout, all the mental exhaustion, we live that ourselves. And if you don't have a support network, meaning if you don't have a helpful husband, if you don't have a mom or a person who can help you with the baby, with the house and all this, then I think you are screwed. And I've seen many women basically that they have to also in a way do also other roles, like house basically chores, or they have to basically take care of the husband beside the baby, take care for the parents and all this kind of stuff, and they don't have a support network, and they are still doing a great work basically. I've seen them, and I know that there is a huge burnout on their side. But what should we do? I think what should we do is on us as female leaders, but we have to teach also the male leaders that watch out these women, right? Maybe they don't complain. because they got used to not complaining. That, hey, I'm in pain because of menstrual cycle, I am burned out and all this. But watch out, because there are signs, and Dr. Zakia mentioned, Amy mentioned, Latisha mentioned, many of these signs, basically, that they are not well, and eventually there will be a dropout, basically, as we have seen and you mentioned, of executives, or they will leave their job. And you see most of the women are in social impact roles or in other roles, because they feel like the corporate world, sometimes the consulting world, for example, IM, is too intensive and too tough, and they are between the choice: should I be a great mom sometimes, or should I be a great basically performer and employee? And sometimes they have to choose, unfortunately, at the stage of life. But the labor market, the companies are losing a lot, and this is what I can say.
Erila, that's quite insightful there. And one of the things that you mentioned when you said the clash between what society expects of us as women and what we expect of ourselves as women, and then the solution there. I think one of the things that the system has to do now is to make the office fit women, not we fitting into the office, because the office needs to understand that we have biological clocks and we can change that. We're proud of that, but we can change that. And these are the things that women needs to take in consideration when they step into leadership roles and find themselves in decision-making rooms to stand up for other women. And I love that when you said the best colleagues you had were women. I felt so proud. Not that I don't think having our male counterparts being the best colleagues is not good, but it's a good representation that we look up to, for women to keep showing up in the workplace and doing better at what they love doing. So thank you very much, Erila. Susan, I'll be coming over to you with the next question. And you're a mindfulness coach, so I think you have so much to share with us on what what does psychologically safe leadership look like for women?
Thank you, Salvation. And I love that question, but can I please jump in on the last one?
Go ahead.
Because what we're talking about expectations of us, but expectations of ourselves, expectation creates our identity. And we want to talk about what is happening around us in these workspaces. These workspaces decades ago were initially created by men, but women, we are in there in force, and it is our turn to energetically change what is occurring. And I know everyone knows about it. Like attracts like. But if we sit here thinking about how things aren't working out for us, we're attracting more that isn't working out for us. So, this workplace where, you talked about dress code, Amy, I was with you. I hit menopause in a school where I had to keep 30 kids warm. I was too hot, and I had the temperature changed for me. And my principal came to address that with me. And I said, I'm in here 5 hours a day. They're in here for 1, and they have a sweater in their backpack. And it was, I had to fight it. But but I thought, no, I'm in a workplace where I'm comfortable. I started to imagine myself being comfortable. What did that look like? It meant expecting things to work out for me. And I don't want that to sound flippant, but if we expect things to change occurs, and we can expect it of ourselves and of others. I mean, if you look at the UK right now, the large employers are coming up with menopause action plans. Ladies, where did that come from? Us, from our energy. And this is something that we can absolutely do. So you talk about psychologically safe leadership. What does that look like? It looks like what you were talking about, Salvation, about being proud of being that woman coworker that I think it was Erida said they were the best. Be proud of that, but embrace those psychological rhythms, those emotional rhythms, those hormonal rhythms that are within us all, and flex to that. So expecting the world to change for us is good. And I don't mean stomping around saying you should do what I want, but walking around going, you know what? What if this worked out for me? What if getting pregnant, maybe it doesn't work in this job, but what if it leads to the next best job? What if it leads to something else that's even better for me? And expecting in that realm. And I think leadership leadership in that way means voicing that, voicing, you know what, this might not work out, but I'm looking forward to something that does. Modeling that for other women instead of modeling, I'm not calling us victims, don't hear this, but there's often that this is happening to us feeling. And we are in charge in so many realms. And where we're not, why don't we expect ourselves to take that foot forward and to be leaders there as well? Because we can and we have. And we could all name 5 women right now that we admire, who have affected change, who have changed their world around them, which has then upshifted the energy on the planet. And aren't we grateful? And I think psychological leadership for women means modeling power, modeling our energetic power, modeling not power over others, but power to belong, power to do what we are brought here to do and to live out our purpose in a world with men.
Yeah. Susan, I agree with you. I wish there's like a like button, a love button. I'm giving all to you on what you just mentioned. Yeah, exactly. And I totally agree with you. Amy, you have something to add to what Susan just said now, do you?
Yes, I'd love to. I mean, I was thinking a lot about psychological safety and what that really means. And in experiences that I've had in global organizations, oftentimes it's standing for an authentic and unified expression of our values. So, you know, I'm sure many people have experienced this. I had, you know, one boss of a global organization who was externally an advocate of women's rights, but he spoke about really smart women in a sexist and unbelievably disparaging way. And every time that would happen, I would respond to it. It didn't create any change, not in that particular individual, but I was very aware of the younger men who were looking to that, you know, modeling the behavior of this older leader that they were seeing. And I needed to, not in an adversarial way, I mean, sometimes I get really annoyed, but to really say the values of our organization, the values that we're working for, the values are about intelligence, trustworthiness, respect, communication. So if you call this brilliant Harvard PhD international speaker a hot babe, that is not okay. It is really not okay. Now this, I mean, it still happens. And unfortunately, I think some things are changing in other parts of the world. In America, we're seeing a rise of locker room talk. And I think it's really important for the women in the room to, in order to create psychological safety, is to hold to our values in a way that is peaceful but firm. You know, the great Vietnamese Zen teacher Thich Nhat Hanh used to talk about walking peacefully, and he would go to these anti-nuclear marches and people were very angry. And he said, no, we have to manifest peace with our being, but it also means being very strong. And I think that, you know, one thing that I found is that the culture in my home country is changing in ways that are less friendly to women. And I think it's something that for us to feel like we're safe to continue to move forward, we need to really value our quiet but firm authenticity and recognize that we have to continue to support each other and, you know, a values-led workplace, even in environments, not in a you know, an aggressive way, but in a way that is positive and uncompromising. And otherwise, I really do worry about the next generation coming up and what they're going to model.
Yes, Susan and Amy, you know, with what you just shared with us, I think that we should be educators as women. I think we are naturally, we're born with the skills to be educators. I mean, Look at what happens with the genetics of bringing a child into the world and then having to teach the child how to use a spoon to eat, how to listen, how to wash their hands, how to, these things. We do not have to go to university to learn that we need to do that. This is a natural instinct, and women are born to be educators by nature. I think, and with what Susan shared with us from her experience with when she was having menopause, the experience of having the heat there. If she doesn't stand up for herself, no one will. If she doesn't share her experience and say, look, this is what I'm going through, and you need to understand and support me, no one will. And I think we need to also represent ourselves in a way that others should understand us and support us, even though they do not agree with what we're going through or understand us in a way that they should understand us. Like with what you just shared, that your email now, yeah, with the male counterparts looking up to you. I'm sure somewhere, wherever they are right now in the world, one day they will cross paths with a scenario similar to what goes on in the office, and they will quote you, Amy. They would say, I know somebody that stood up for something like this. You may not know it, but we're sowing seeds, and those seeds germinate. And that's why we need to stand up for ourselves. We need to educate others around us. So I think we need to carry that forward. We need to carry the mindset that we need to stand up for ourselves non-violently as much as we can, but we need to carry it forward. Letitia, we don't have much time, Letitia. I want you to take us to the next question, and then please briefly, I know you've mentioned a bit of this before, how does work intersect with women's health? Just briefly, and then we'll move forward. Sorry, Letitia, your mic is muted. Please unmute. Yeah.
Apologize.
Sorry.
Absolutely. And I'm sorry, how does work intersect with women's health? Was that the question?
Yes.
I think ultimately it's being able to identify to what all the ladies have said, but it's being able to really identify what does health mean, right? What does healthy look like in an organization? And it's being able to talk about it. And so when we say like it really intersects, like it is being able to, and I've said this before, call out loud the things that we might be dealing with. It's not compartmentalizing it, but it's leaning into it. It's not being afraid to have the conversations. It's not being afraid. And I know people get tired of hearing this, but when someone says, how are you doing? It is saying, today's not a good day, right? Or this moment's not a good moment for me. And so it is truly leaning in to whatever it is that you are going through and not being afraid that we will be labeled as incompetent of doing our job, right? That we are not worthy of doing our job. So it's being able to parse out those two things and instead being able to say, you are very much worthy of being in this role. And what humanizes it are the things that you go through. And so I think that's where it lives, at the intersection. And that's when we start to have those healthy conversations.
Yes, I agree with you, Letitia, on that one. I would just zoom into Dr. Zakia. Letitia, before I zoom into Dr. Zakia, I just wanted to point out that a scenario that played out in my class as a teacher, as a student teacher in my service time, was that a student had her first experience of menstrual cycle, and she didn't know what it was. And then she stood up, and everybody started laughing. I'm like, "What's going on in my class?" And I turned back. Oh, we moved from talking about farms and the reason why we plant vegetables in farms to talking about menstrual cycle, and then it occurred to me that what's happening is that even the education system do not create room to be able to integrate women biological system in education to create awareness even in the classrooms so that these things do not occur. I felt sorry for that little girl that she was so embarrassed, but it's concerning that we don't take these things into notice, and that's why we keep talking about systems to recognize where we need to bring the intersection of women's health and addressing that issue. So thank you very much, Letitia, on that. Dr. Zakir, just before we wrap up, just briefly tell us, what does equitable health support in corporate policy look like? We'll be talking about systems. Now let's talk about what does it support? What does the policy look like to us?
Well, the policy has to look beyond just maternity leave. I think we've been talking about maternity leave for so long, but that's just the very basic thing that all women, all working women should be given regardless. It has to include things that will increase longevity and lifespan and the health of a woman. Things like fertility and IVF support if that's needed. Those who are caregivers who have small children, work flexibility so they're able to do both and not have to be burnt out at either end. Any kind of preventative screening would be great for women to have access to. I think when it comes to equity, it means recognizing that there's a lot more to this than just physical presence. There's a lot. It's recognizing the invisible labor that women have to do all the time. So women perform a majority of the caregiving responsibilities throughout the world. And the companies, they need to recognize that this is the reality, and they have to create policies that support that so that it can lead to employee retention, right? In a workplace culture positivity. The one thing they need to realize is losing one employee for corporate companies, it takes about $40,000 in hiring another person to retrain them, to teach them and have them be on board to the level of the person that they're losing. So instead of facing that as a loss, they need to see how that is an actual loss from their bottom line and use that information to change the policies that they have in their workplace culture. I think this is a strategy that's really easily attainable, and it would actually benefit them and benefit their bottom line, as well as the mental health and the physical health of the female employee. So corporate America, corporate anywhere, corporate companies have they're very tangible, attainable things that they can do to change the problem, where in fact, in the end, it will benefit them long term as far as retaining the employees that are dedicated to the company, and also saving them a lot of money at the end of the day and making a bigger profit. So this is good all around. I'm not really sure why it's not seen that way, but when you look at the numbers, that really is how it plays out.
Yeah, Dr. Zaki, I'm also not sure why it's not seen that way as well. It's not difficult to see, right? Like we can see it in the open, it's there. It's there. Thank you very much, Dr. Zaki, for that contribution. Arila, just briefly mention one role. What role should stakeholders play in evaluating the companies based on employee health standard? Just maybe one of you.
I think, yeah, sure. One is, for example, the boards, right, and executives that they should really think about well-being KPIs, or let's say burnout rates, or psychologically safety, basically survey scores that they can do. But all this, I am pro of KPIs, but all this should make sure that people really will feel those truthfully. Because what I've seen is things exist on paper most of the time, and we mention maternity leaves, we mention many stuff, but actually in reality, those are not materialized as it should, because people are still. Let me take an example: the menstrual, basically. A paid leave that you can get, for example, in Spain or in Japan. And from the studies, it was found that 0.9% of women were getting this in Japan, because they were afraid if they get this leave, they would basically scold out, or people would say, oh, why you did get this leave right now? I'm not going to give you this project. They will be seen, let's say, not as equals among their peers. Same thing happened in Spain. Everybody was satisfied about this policy, and it's great. I know myself, I suffer a lot from the menstrual cycle pain and all this kind of stuff. But the thing is, many people do not take it because I think the environment around us is not encouraging. Do you hear me?
Yes, yes, I heard you. I think there was like a little glitch there, but I heard you
Yeah,
from
so the
accident.
environment around us is not encouraging us really to kind of be open and really take advantage of these policies that I think Susan mentioned. We ourselves have advocated and have pushed for putting those in place.
So it means that we need to see more stakeholders and executive representing the health system. Oh, I know that's much. Arila, are you back here now? Can you hear us?
Yes, do you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. I
Okay,
was
so
I was trying to wrap up with what you just mentioned on us seeing more leaders, organizations paying attention to supporting health care for employees. We have less than 5 minutes. We'll just do one word and then we'll wrap it up here. Susan, just tell us one word you hope to see in women's healthcare. What do you hope to see? If you can manage one word, shoot.
Ooh, that's mean. Honestly, flexibility, honoring who we are. If we can honor a disabled person with parking spaces and work accommodations and their desks looking a certain way and their aisles looking a certain way, why can't we do that for women? Whatever they're going through. Sorry, that's more than one word.
It's okay, Suzanne. Thank you very much for that contribution. I also hope to see flexibility and change. I totally agree with you on that. Dr. Saki, one word.
Funding. We need more funding.
I agree. Yes, of course we do. We
Yes.
do. Leticia, one word. What one word do you hope to see in
Sustainability.
women's sustainability? Yes, it is. Yes, we need to sustain what we're building and support what we already have. Amy, one word.
I'd say we, not he or she. So the
Oh,
one word would be we, would be us, would be the collective.
yes, yes. I love that, Amy. We, of course. Yes, we can all do it together. Thank you, Amy. Erila, one word.
I don't have one word, but I have a quote that I have about this. I believe us women will solve our issues, basically, because we know and we start from this personal issue. So, my quote to all women innovators is don't take permission to innovate, but start where you are with what you know.
I think that will sit with us, Erila. We'll take that home and hopefully we share it where we can. So thank you very much. Susan, Dr. Zaki, Letitia, Amy, and Erila, I had a very great opportunity having these conversations with you. I listened, it was incredible. A lot of what you shared here resonated with me. And let me share this with you before we leave this. Susan, I look up to you. Dr. Zaki, I also look up to you. Letitia, I look up to you. Amy, I look up to you. Arila, I look up to you. You may not know this, but somewhere out there, whatever you do, I'm sure it changes the life of the next person. That changes the life of the next person. That may influence my life, my sister's life, my neighbor's life, wherever. It's really affecting everybody. So we're representing the women of the future, and everything we do is important. It was great to have this conversation with you. Thank you very much for joining, for sharing your perspectives and your expressions. Audience, please follow our speakers. You've heard them speak. They've shared a lot with us. Connect with them. Thank you very much once again to the GatherVerse team and Christopher Lafayette. Our Gather was well.
Thank you, Salvation. A pleasure to
Thank
meet
you.
all the
Thank
ladies.
you.
Yeah,
Thank you
bye.
very much.